Andre Whitfield was 38 years old when his father collapsed, and his wife texted that she was already at the hospital, sitting by his bedside. Andre believed her completely. He always had. He was a logistics manager, steady, overlooked, the kind of man people called boring. Without knowing, he noticed everything. He rushed through those ER doors expecting to find Tamika holding his father's hand. Instead, he found his father alone, terrified, and abandoned. A nurse pulled him into the hallway, lowered her voice, and told him his wife had never set foot in that department tonight. But she had seen her before. Same day, same time, every single week, for 6 months, visiting someone else entirely in administration. Andre said nothing. He simply listened, his face unreadable, while a single question began rewriting everything he thought he knew about his marriage. What he decided in that hallway would end careers, end marriages, and end a lie 9 years in the making. But for now, all he did was breathe and wait. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The shipping manifest on Andre Whitfield's screen had a hole in it big enough to drive a truck through. Literally. Truck number 7714 was sitting in a yard in Memphis with 14 pallets of refrigerated medical supplies that were supposed to be in Charlotte by 6 the next morning. The driver had logged a mechanical failure at 11:42 a.m. It was now 2:17 p.m. Nobody on the afternoon shift had flagged it. Nobody had rerouted. Nobody had called the client. Nobody, except Andre. Deja. He didn't raise his voice. He never did. His logistics coordinator looked up from across the open floor. Get me Barfield Transport on line 2 and pull up every refrigerated carrier we have within 150 miles of Memphis. I need 3 options in 10 minutes. On it, she said, already moving. His supervisor, Carl, stopped by his doorway with a coffee mug and a look that was half impressed, half relieved. You catch that Memphis thing? Fixing it now. Carl pointed at him like he'd won something and walked away. That was Andre's world. Quiet problems, quiet solutions. He moved through crises the way water moves around a rock. Steady, unhurried, finding the path forward without making a scene. His team respected him for it. His bosses relied on him for it. He had been doing this for 11 years. Senior operations manager at Lakeview Freight Solutions. He knew every carrier, every bottleneck, every weak link in the chain. He could look at a spreadsheet the way other men read a face, and know exactly where the lie was hiding. At home, things were different. 9 years of marriage to Tamika had given him a life that looked right from the outside. Their house on Delwood Drive was clean and well kept. Their social media looked like a highlight reel. Dinners out, birthday posts, couples trips to the coast. Tamika was good at that. She had a gift for presentation. As a physical therapist at Meridian Sports Rehab, she was warm and professional. The kind of woman who made a strong first impression and an even stronger second one. But lately, the edges of things had started to feel different. Small things. The kind of things that didn't mean anything alone. Her phone, always placed face down on the counter. Late clinic days that stretched past 8, sometimes 9 o'clock. A renewed gym obsession that had started almost exactly 6 months ago, though her body hadn't really changed. The way she sometimes laughed at her phone and then put it away before he could see what was funny. The distance, not dramatic, not cruel, just a slow pulling back, like a tide going out so gradually you don't notice until you're standing on dry sand. Andre noticed. He just hadn't done anything with it yet. He was still deciding what it meant. His cell phone buzzed against the desk at 3:44 p.m. He glanced down, expecting Deja with the Memphis update. The name on the screen was Marcus, Pop's neighbor, a retired teacher who lived 2 houses down, and checked in on Walter Whitfield more than Walter would ever admit he appreciated. Andre picked up. Marcus. Andre. The man's voice was tight. Too tight. Your daddy collapsed in the backyard. I called 911. They're on their way, son. You need to come. The words hit him like cold water. Is he conscious? He was. He went down grabbing his chest. They're almost here. I can hear the sirens. I'm leaving now. Andre was already on his feet, jacket in hand. Which hospital? Crestview Medical. That's the closest. I'm on my way. Stay with him, Marcus. He ended the call and texted Tamika without breaking stride, typing fast as he moved through the office toward the exit. Pop collapsed. Ambulance taking him to Crestview Medical ER. Heading there now. He stopped at Deja's desk for exactly 4 seconds. Family emergency. The Memphis situation. Barfield Transport. Ask for Lewis. Tell him it's Andre Whitfield, and I need the Charlotte run covered tonight. He'll do it. Then he was out the door. He drove with both hands on the wheel and his jaw tight. His mind kept trying to go to dark places, so he pulled it back. He thought about Pop's hands instead. Big, rough hands that had sorted mail for 31 years. Hands that had taught him to tie his shoes, to throw a spiral, to change his first tire in a parking lot behind a Kroger when Andre was 16 and embarrassed about not knowing how. Pop laughing at his kitchen table. Pop burning the bottoms of pancakes every single Sunday and refusing to admit it. Pop at his wedding, in a suit that was slightly too short at the ankles, looking prouder than Andre had ever seen him look. He's fine, Andre told himself. He's tough. He's going to be fine. His phone lit up on the passenger seat. One new message. Tamika. He read it at a red light. OMG, I'm already here with him. They just took him back. Baby, hurry. He's okay. They're looking at him. Come to the ER entrance, I'll be right outside. Andre exhaled for the first time since Marcus called. She was already there. Of course she was. He pressed the accelerator and followed the signs toward Crestview Medical, the hospital's pale concrete tower rising above the tree line ahead of him, its red emergency sign glowing against the gray afternoon sky. He pulled into the ER entrance, put the car in park, and stepped out onto the pavement, phone in hand, eyes scanning the sliding glass doors for his wife. The sliding glass doors opened with a rush of cold, antiseptic air. Andre stepped inside and went straight to the front desk. A young man in scrubs looked up from his computer. My father was just brought in by ambulance. Walter Whitfield. The young man typed something. He's in triage bay 4. Down the hall. Turn left. Third curtain. Andre was already moving. The ER was loud in that particular way. Hospitals are loud. Not chaotic, just relentlessly busy. Monitors beeping. Wheels rolling over linoleum. A woman crying softly somewhere behind a curtain. Andre moved past all of it, his eyes ahead, his mind locked on one thing. Tamika said she'd be outside. She wasn't outside. He'd looked. He figured she'd stepped back in. He turned left at the end of the hall, found the third curtain, pulled it back. Pop was alone. He was lying on a narrow bed in a thin hospital gown, an oxygen sensor clipped to his finger, a blood pressure cuff on his left arm. His eyes were open, and when he saw Andre, something in his face loosened, like a knot coming undone. "Boy," Pop said, and his voice was rough and small in a way Andre had never heard before. Andre crossed the room in 2 steps and took his father's hand. It was cold. "I'm here, Pop. I got you. They keep poking at me." Pop looked down at the IV line running into his arm. "I don't like all this poking. They're helping you." Andre looked him over, the pale gray tint to his brown skin, the careful way he was breathing. "How do you feel?" "Like I fell in the backyard." Pop almost smiled. "Because I fell in the backyard." "What happened?" "Pressure in my chest, then my knees went out from under me." "Marcus called you?" "He did." Andre squeezed his hand. "You scared me, old man." Pop looked past him at the open curtain. "Where's Tamika?" Andre turned. The curtain was open. The hallway beyond it was a stream of nurses and orderlies and rolling carts. No, Tamika. She'll be in soon, Andre said. He kept his voice easy. He stepped to the curtain and looked both ways down the hall. Nothing. He checked his phone. No new texts since her first one. He typed fast. I'm with Pop in Triage Bay 4. Where are you? He watched the screen for a moment. Nothing came back. He stepped out into the hallway and stopped the first nurse he saw, a young woman with a clipboard. Excuse me. My wife was here when my father came in. Tamika Whitfield. Has anyone seen her? The woman shook her head. I just came on. You could check at the desk. He went back to the front desk. Different person now. An older woman with reading glasses. My wife said she was here when my father came in. Walter Whitfield. Triage Bay 4. Tamika Whitfield. Has anyone logged her as a visitor? Or, let me check, she typed. Squinted at the screen. I don't see any visitor sign in under that name tonight. Andre stood still for a moment. Okay, he said. Thank you. He turned back toward Pop's Bay. He was 3 steps down the hall when a voice stopped him. Mr. Whitfield. He turned. The woman was in her mid-40s, broad-shouldered, wearing blue scrubs with a triage badge clipped to the collar. Nurse Patrice Odom. She had the face of someone who'd seen enough hospital drama to know when something mattered, and when it didn't. And right now, her expression said, this mattered. I overheard you asking about your wife, she said, keeping her voice low. Do you know where she is? Patrice glanced once down the hall, then back at him. Can you come with me for just a second? She led him a few feet away from the main corridor to a small alcove beside a supply closet. She folded her arms, not unkindly, and looked at him with something between discomfort and resolve. Your wife wasn't with your father tonight, she said. I was the charge nurse on intake when he came in. He came in alone with the paramedics. I haven't seen her in this department at all this evening. Andre opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I recognize the name Tamika Whitfield, Patrice continued carefully, because I've seen her here before. Not in the ER. She comes in through the main entrance, same day every week. Thursdays. Has been for about 6 months now, as far as I've noticed. She paused. She visits someone in administration. The hall sounds continued around him. Wheels, monitors, distant voices. None of it reached him. He was aware of his own breathing. In, out. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights above them. Same day, every week, 6 months. Administration. I see, Andre said. His voice came out calm. He had no idea how. Patrice watched him for a moment like she wanted to say something else, then decided against it. She gave him a small, sorry nod and walked back toward the nursing station. Andre stood in the alcove. The wall was cool against his shoulder. He hadn't realized he'd leaned into it. He stood there for 10 seconds, maybe 15. Long enough to let the thing land, to feel the full weight of it pressed down on his chest, and then, slowly, to breathe through it. He had to go back in there. Pop was alone and scared, and Pop could not see his face looking the way it felt right now. Andre straightened up. He rolled his shoulders back. He arranged his expression the way you arrange a room before company comes. Everything in its place. Nothing out of order. Nothing that didn't belong. Then he walked back down the hall, pulled the curtain aside, and stepped into his father's room. Pop's heart was still his own. That was what the cardiologist said around 9 o'clock, after the second round of tests came back. Mild cardiac event, the doctor explained. A thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who spoke in measured, unhurried sentences. Not a full heart attack. We want to keep him overnight for observation and run a stress test in the morning. But his numbers are stabilizing. Andre shook the man's hand and thanked him. Pop, propped up on 2 pillows with an oxygen tube now looped under his nose, watched the whole exchange with sharp, tired eyes. Mild, Pop repeated after the doctor left. Like it was a mild inconvenience. You're alive, Andre said. That's what matters. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look at the door. He just sat with his father the way Pop had once sat with him in a hospital waiting room when Andre was 11 and had broken his arm falling off a fence. Quiet, steady, right there. Outside the curtain, the ER kept moving. Shifts changed. Voices rose and fell. Inside Andre's head, Patrice Odom's words played on a loop he couldn't switch off. Same day, every week, 6 months. Administration. He let Pop talk. About the backyard. About the neighbor's dog that had startled him. About the paramedic who had very cold hands. Andre listened and nodded and responded at the right moments. And all the while the other part of his brain, the part that built shipping timelines and caught errors in freight manifests before they became disasters, was quietly running numbers. 6 months of Thursdays. He counted backward without meaning to. Tamika arrived at 11:43. He heard her heels first, clicking down the linoleum hall with that particular rhythm he knew without thinking about it. Then the curtain moved, and there she was, eyes wide, breath a little short, hand pressed to her chest in a performance of frantic worry. "Oh my God, Pop." She went straight to the bed, leaned down, kissed his forehead. "I am so sorry I wasn't here. Baby, I am so sorry." Pop said nothing, just watched her. She turned to Andre next and pulled him into a hug he returned without stiffening. He was careful about that. "The traffic was insane," she said into his shoulder. "And then my phone died completely. I didn't even realize until I was almost here. I felt terrible. I couldn't call. I couldn't text." "It's fine," Andre said. "You're here now." He stepped back and looked at her. Really looked. She'd changed clothes since morning. That happened sometimes. She'd come from a long clinic day, get something on her scrubs, change in the car. That alone meant nothing. But she'd also showered. He could tell by the way her edges were freshly laid, the skin at her hairline still slightly dewy. Her perfume was something floral and light. He didn't recognize it, and he knew her perfumes. He'd bought most of them. He let his eyes drop to her hands as she reached up to adjust her earring. Her ring was on. Gold band, princess-cut diamond, exactly where it always was, but the skin beneath it was a shade lighter than the skin around it. A faint, pale ring inside the ring, like it had been off for a while, like the sun had touched everything around it, except that one small circle. He noticed all of this in the time it took her to finish her sentence. "I should have charged my phone this morning," she said, shaking her head. "I just feel awful." "Don't worry about it." He gestured to the chair beside Pop's bed. "Sit with him." She did, and Andre stood back and watched her hold his father's hand and ask all the right questions in all the right tones, and he felt something inside him go very, very still. Not cold. Not numb. Still. The way a pond goes still before you can see your own reflection clearly in it. Around 1 in the morning, Tamika fell asleep in the recliner chair the nurses had brought in. Her breathing slowed and evened out. Pop looked at Andre over her sleeping form. "Come here," Pop said, barely above a whisper. Andre leaned in close. Pop's eyes were clear and dark and steady. "You're not as slow as people think, are you, son?" It wasn't a question. Andre held his gaze for a moment. Then he gave one small, slow nod. Pop patted his hand once and closed his eyes. Andre got home at 2:30. Tamika had stayed at the hospital, saying she wanted Pop to wake up to a familiar face. He hadn't argued. The house was dark. He didn't turn on many lights. He sat down at the kitchen table with his laptop. The refrigerator hummed. The street outside was quiet. He opened a browser and created a new email account. Nothing connected to his name, nothing connected to anything she'd recognize. Then he opened a blank folder. He stared at the cursor for a moment. Then he typed 2 words. Inventory. He pressed Enter. And then, slowly and deliberately, he began to type. Every late night she'd explained away. Every Thursday she'd accounted for with a story that had, now that he lined them up, always been just slightly too smooth. He wrote it all down. Every crack he'd spackled over without thinking. Everything he'd chosen, without realizing he was choosing not to see. The cursor blinked steadily in the quiet kitchen as Andre Whitfield began, for the first time, to look. 3 days passed. Andre went to work. He filed reports. He approved freight routes and caught a routing error on a Milwaukee shipment that would have cost the company $11,000. He ate lunch at his desk. He answered emails. He came home, ate whatever Tamika had cooked or picked up, and talked with her about nothing important. He was very good at normal. He had always been good at normal. But at night, after she fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and he worked. It started with the credit card statements. They had one joint account, a rewards card they'd opened 6 years ago for travel points. Tamika used it for groceries, gas, the occasional dinner out. Andre paid the full balance every month, which meant he'd never had reason to read the statements closely. He'd just looked at the total, confirmed it was reasonable, and paid it. He read them closely now. He pulled up 18 months of statements and exported them into a spreadsheet, the same kind of layout he used to track freight billing at work. Vendor, date, amount, category. He color-coded by day of the week. All the Thursdays turned yellow. Then he filtered by Tamika's charges, anything that matched the types of places she frequented. And the pattern started showing its shape, the way a picture sharpens when your eyes finally find the focus point. There was nothing suspicious on her card. No hotels, no unfamiliar restaurants, no charges she couldn't explain. That was the first tell. A woman who used a joint card for everything suddenly had 0 Thursday charges for 6 straight months, like she'd switched to something else entirely on that one specific day of the week. He went looking for what she'd switched to. The gym check-in app was her idea 2 years ago, a fitness tracker she'd put on both their phones so they could keep each other accountable. Andre used it exactly once and forgot about it. Tamika posted her check-ins religiously, the little blue tick marks that logged time in and time out. He pulled her check-in history. Tamika claimed she went to the gym on Thursdays. He'd heard her say it. "I hit the gym Thursday afternoons. You know that." On 6 consecutive Thursdays over the past 6 months, her check-in log showed she'd entered the gym at 5:23, 5:15, 5:31, times that were, every single time, slightly different. Organic-looking, the kind of variation a person would create if they were thinking about it. But checkout? The same. Always 6:04 or 6:05. Never longer. 40-some minutes, every time, like a machine. No one worked out for exactly 40 minutes, 6 weeks in a row by accident. People who actually went to the gym lost track of time. They stayed too long or left early. They skipped a week and doubled up the next. 40 minutes, every Thursday, for 6 months. Clean, mechanical, fake. He thought about what Nurse Odom had said. Same time, same day. Every week, for months. He pulled up the clinic's scheduling portal next. Tamika had shared the login with him 2 years ago for insurance purposes. He'd never had a reason to use it until now. Her schedule was still there, fully visible. He found her Thursday shifts. She was scheduled to end at 3:30 every Thursday. He'd always thought it was a late day. She'd always said it was a late day. Thursdays are rough. We're slammed until at least 6. Scheduled end time, 3:30. Every single week. He sat back in his chair and stared at the screen. She'd been done by 3:30, telling him 6 or later. Then checking into a gym for 40 minutes around 5 to manufacture an alibi, which left a clean window from roughly 4 to 5, maybe longer on the days she skipped the gym charade. A window you could do a lot with if you had somewhere to be. He went looking for the hotel on a Thursday morning. On his lunch break, using a search he ran from his work computer through a private browser. It didn't take long. The downtown area near Crestview Medical had 4 hotels. He cross-referenced corporate card hotel billing patterns the same way he cross-referenced freight vendor rates. One hotel came up repeatedly in the kind of financial forums and corporate travel discussions his industry used, a mid-rise called the Alderton Suites, full weekly corporate rates, discreet, business class. He drove there after work. He sat in his car across the street and looked up at it, the Alderton Suites, 14 stories, dark glass, a revolving door at the entrance with 2 potted trees on either side, clipped and neat. The kind of place that looked expensive without trying to look expensive. He took a photo of the entrance on his phone, noted the address, wrote it into the folder on his encrypted drive, Alderton Suites, 114 Commerce Drive, downtown, 6-month Thursday pattern, corporate prepay, not her card. He sat there for another minute, just looking at the building. Then he put the car in drive and headed home. Tamika was in the kitchen when he walked in, humming to something playing through her earbuds, stirring a pot of something that smelled like garlic and onions. She pulled an earbud out and smiled at him. "Hey, you're late." "Traffic," he said. He hung up his keys, washed his hands, and sat down at the table to wait for dinner. The call took him 4 minutes to prepare for. Andre sat in his car in the Crestview Medical Visitor parking lot on a Tuesday morning, reviewing the notes he'd typed into his phone the night before. Talking points. A vendor contact name he'd pulled from a public procurement filing. The name of a freight software platform his company actually used, one that had a legitimate contract with several regional hospitals in the state. He wasn't going to lie. Not exactly. He was going to let the truth do most of the work and only fill in the gaps. He straightened his tie in the rearview mirror, picked up his work bag, and went inside. The administrative wing of Crestview Medical was on the 2nd floor, past a set of frosted glass doors that opened with a badge swipe. Or, if you looked like you belonged, a polite wave from the security desk when you said the right things. Andre Whitfield, Senior Operations Manager at Meridian Freight Solutions. I have a standing vendor relationship with your supply and logistics procurement team, and I'm in the area doing routine site audits. I'm hoping to verify a few invoice line items with someone in administration. The man at the desk, young, bored, barely looking up, made a brief call, nodded, printed a visitor badge. 2nd floor. Someone will meet you up there. No one met him up there. That was fine. Better, actually. He stood for a moment in the 2nd floor lobby, which had the quiet, carpeted feel of an insurance office. Framed mission statements on the walls, a reception desk with a woman who was deeply involved in whatever was on her computer screen, a printed staff directory mounted behind acrylic on the wall beside the elevator, the kind hospitals kept up for visitors who needed to find a department head. Andre walked to it slowly, the way a man walks when he's not in a hurry, because he has every right to be there. He read it top to bottom. He found the name on the 3rd scan. Garrett Boone, Director of Hospital Operations, Administrative Services Division, Room 214. Andre took out his phone and typed the name into his notes without looking away from the directory. Then he walked to the reception desk and introduced himself again, mentioned the procurement connection, and asked if he could use one of the guest terminals to pull up some invoice documentation for cross-reference. The woman pointed to a terminal in the corner without breaking from her own screen. "Help yourself." He worked quickly, methodically, the same way he worked at his own desk. He pulled up a public vendor portal that Crestview Medical used for procurement submissions, a system he knew because Meridian Freight used the same platform with 3 other hospital networks. He had a legitimate login. He used it. The invoices were there, dozens of them. Freight and supply vendor submissions going back 2 years, logged under the Operations Division, Garrett Boone's division. Andre scanned them the way he scanned freight manifests. His eye was trained to catch the thing that was slightly off. the number that didn't fit the pattern around it. At work, it was a routing cost that ran 8% over market rate for 3 straight quarters. A vendor billing the same delivery fee for routes of wildly different distance. Here, it took him less than 10 minutes. There were rebate credits, payments that were supposed to flow back to the hospital when vendors hit certain purchase volume thresholds. Standard practice. Andre knew the format cold. But 3 vendor accounts were logging rebate credits at rates that ran almost double what the corresponding purchase volumes justified. And the receiving account number on those credits wasn't a Crestview medical account he recognized from the standard disbursement fields. It was the same account. All 3 vendors, same routing number, different from everything else on the page. A man without his background might have missed it. It didn't look like theft at first glance. It looked like a data entry quirk, a rounding variance, the kind of thing a tired auditor skips over on a Friday afternoon. Andre did not skip over things. He took out his phone and photographed the screen. 3 shots. The vendor names, the rebate figures, the account number. He kept his hand steady and his face completely neutral, the way he'd kept his face neutral in Pop's hospital room when Tamika walked in smelling like someone else's soap. He went back through the directory listing before he closed out of the portal. Garrett Boone, Director of Hospital Operations. He ran the name through the hospital's public staff page on his phone. The bio was brief. Garrett Boone joined Crestview Medical in 2019. He holds an MBA from Dartmouth and oversees all vendor, supply, and facilities contracts for the institution. Below his name in the department contact section was a secondary listing. Felicia Boone, Financial Compliance Auditor, Administrative Services Division. Same last name. Same division. Same building. Andre read it twice. Then he sat very still for a moment, the hum of the terminal fan the only sound around him. Garrett's wife worked in financial compliance. In the same department, in the same hospital where her husband had been quietly routing money into an account that didn't belong to anyone on the official book. Andre cleared the browser history, logged out of the portal, and stood up. He nodded to the woman at the reception desk. She didn't look up. He walked back to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited with his hands folded in front of him and his bag at his side. By the time the doors opened, a plan had already started taking shape. He chose his words carefully. That was the thing about Andre. He always did. It was a Sunday evening. Tamika was at the kitchen counter slicing fruit, her back to him, her phone face down beside the cutting board, the way it always was now. The news played low on the TV in the next room. The apartment smelled like mango and dish soap. Everything looked normal. Everything had always looked normal. I talked to Pop's cardiologist, Andre said from the doorway. They want to do his follow-up at Mercy Regional instead of Crestview. Something about their cardiac imaging equipment being newer. I'm going to take him Thursday afternoon. Tamika kept slicing. 1 beat. 2. Thursday? She said. Yeah, around 2. She turned around, and there it was. Just a flash, the way light catches a window and disappears. A small, involuntary softening around her eyes. Relief she hadn't meant to show. Okay, she said, nodding. Good. That makes sense. Mercy's supposed to have a really good cardiology unit. That's what I heard. She set the knife down and picked up her phone. Actually, that works out. I was looking at the clinic schedule, and I have some flexibility that afternoon. She said it casually, the way people say things they've been waiting to say. Maybe I'll get a workout in, or run some errands. Sure, Andre said. He walked to the refrigerator and poured himself a glass of water. He kept his eyes on the glass. She went back to slicing fruit. Neither of them said anything else for a while. He called Patrice Odom on Wednesday from his car, parked in a lot 2 blocks from the freight company. Engine off. He had her number from the follow-up discharge paperwork Crestview had sent after Pop's stay. He'd saved it without knowing why. Maybe he'd known. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Nurse Odom, this is Andre Whitfield. Walter Whitfield's son. You spoke with me the night my father came in. A pause. Yes, Mr. Whitfield. I remember. Her voice was careful. Professionally careful. The kind of careful that meant she was paying attention. How is your father doing? He's better. A lot better. Thank you. Good, she said. And she meant it. He could hear it. He took a breath. I need to ask you for something, and I want you to know I'm not asking you to break any rules. I'm not asking for records or files or anything like that. He stopped. I just need to know if you see my wife in the building tomorrow. That's it. Just whether she's there. The line was quiet for a moment. You're not going to cause a scene in my hospital. It wasn't a question. No, ma'am. Another pause. He heard her exhale slowly. I'll keep my eyes open, she said. She called him Thursday at 4:12 in the afternoon. He was sitting in Pop's living room, Pop in his recliner with the game on. The fake cardiology appointment long since invented and discarded. He stepped into the hallway. She was here, Patrice said. Went straight up to the second floor around 2:30. Stayed about an hour. She paused. I didn't follow her, Mr. Whitfield. I just know what I saw. That's all I needed, he said. Thank you, Patrice. He put the phone in his pocket and stood in the hallway for a moment with his hand pressed flat against the wall. Then he went back inside and watched the rest of the game with his father. She was still in the shower Friday morning when her phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. It was one of those buzzes that meant a notification had mirrored to the shared tablet they kept on the bedroom dresser. They'd set it up 2 years ago so Tamika could follow her clinic calendar from bed. He'd forgotten about the sync. Apparently, so had she. The tablet screen lit up on the dresser. He saw it from the doorway. He crossed the room in 5 steps. The preview showed a partial text in a thread labeled with only an initial. G. The message had been sent from Tamika's phone to that contact, not received, but the sync had caught it on the way out. Just confirmed Thursday the 14th with Donna. She said the listing can go up as soon as we're ready. I told her probably 90 days. Once you figure out the money situation we talked about, I can give notice, and we're done. I'm so ready to be done. Andre read it once. Read it again. He set the tablet down very carefully on the dresser. His hands were trembling, just slightly, just enough that he could see it when he held them in front of him. It was the first time his hands had done that through any of this. He noticed it the way he noticed everything. He made note of it. Then he breathed in, slow and even, through his nose. The shower was still running. He picked the tablet back up. He closed the notification. He checked that it was gone from the screen, then set it back on the dresser at the exact angle it had been before. He went to his desk, opened his laptop, and unlocked the folder labeled Inventory. He typed, Realtor. Donna. Listing ready in 90 days. Exit plan tied to Garrett's money situation. Tamika planning to leave once funds secured. He closed the laptop. The shower cut off. He sent the email on a Monday morning from his work account on company letterhead. It was professional, precise. The kind of email that looked exactly like what it claimed to be. Ms. Boone, I'm a senior operations manager at Hargrove Freight Solutions. We currently hold a vendor contract with Crestview Medical and are conducting a routine compliance review of our invoice records for the past fiscal year. During that review, I flagged several disbursement discrepancies tied to your hospital's operations department that I believe fall under your division's purview. I'd welcome the opportunity to meet at your convenience to share what I've found and ensure everything is in proper order on both ends. Please let me know your availability. He signed it with his full name, title, and direct phone number. She replied in 40 minutes. Mr. Whitfield, I can meet Wednesday at 10 a.m. in my office. Please bring copies of any relevant documentation. Her office was on the 3rd floor of Crestview's administrative wing, at the end of a corridor that smelled like printer toner and recycled air. The carpet was gray. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. Everything about the space said function over comfort. Felicia Boone was already at her desk when the receptionist showed him in. She stood to shake his hand, and he took a quick read of her the way he always did with people. Mid-30s, maybe 39. Natural hair, close-cropped. Dark blazer, no jewelry except small gold studs in her ears. Eyes that moved to the folder in his hand before they moved to his face. She was sharp. He'd expected that. He'd counted on it. "Mr. Whitfield," she said. "Have a seat. Thank you for making time." "Of course." She sat back down, folded her hands on the desk, and waited. Not impatiently. She was the kind of person who let silence do its work. He opened the folder and placed 3 sheets on the desk in front of her. Clean printouts. No handwriting, no annotations, nothing personal. Just numbers, vendor codes, and dates arranged in a simple side-by-side comparison. "These are our invoice records on the left," he said, pointing to the first column. "Standard disbursement amounts for the service tier we've been operating under. On the right, the amounts actually posted through your system's vendor payment portal over the past 6 months." He let her look. She picked up the first sheet. Her eyes moved across the rows quickly. Left column, right column, back to left. The kind of reading that meant she already understood what she was seeing. She didn't ask what she was looking at. She just asked, "How large is the average variance?" "Between 12 and 18% per transaction," Andre said. "Consistent, never random." She set the sheet down and picked up the second one. Her expression didn't change much, but something behind her eyes did. A small tightening. The look of someone confirming a suspicion they hadn't yet named out loud. "This rebate notation here," she said, pointing to a line near the bottom of page 2. "This isn't a standard vendor rebate code." "No," Andre said. "It isn't." She looked up at him for the first time since she'd started reading. "Where is this money going?" "I was hoping your department could determine that," he said. "That's above what I'm authorized to trace on my end. Our concern is making sure our invoices aren't being used to route funds somewhere they shouldn't go. That's a liability issue for us." It was all true. Every word. He hadn't lied once. She held his gaze for a moment, measuring him, maybe, or measuring the situation. Then she looked back down at the papers. "Which department submitted these payment authorizations?" "Operations," he said. She didn't react. Not visibly. But she stopped flipping through the pages. Just for a half second. Just long enough. She stacked the papers carefully, lined up the edges, and set them down. "Can I keep these?" "I brought them for you." She nodded once. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention directly, rather than going through the billing department." Her voice was even, professional, and precise. "I'll look into it personally." "I appreciate your time," Andre said. He stood. She stood. They shook hands again. Her grip was firm. Her eyes were already somewhere else. Somewhere behind his shoulder. Or maybe just somewhere inside her own head. Pulling at a thread she'd been meaning to pull for a long time. He walked back down the gray corridor, past the buzzing lights, and out through the lobby into the afternoon air. He spread the file across Pop's kitchen table that night. All of it. The hotel charges, the vendor codes, the timeline, the realtor note. All of it laid out in order. The way he'd lay out a supply chain audit for a client. Pop sat across from him in his recliner, a cup of tea cooling on the side table, reading glasses on, squinting at each page as Andre walked him through it. When Andre finished, Pop was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "And this woman, Felicia, she's going to find it?" "She already suspects something," Andre said. "I just gave her a reason to look." Pop nodded slowly. He took his glasses off and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I want to be there," he said. "When it happens. When all of it comes out." He looked at Andre straight. "I almost died not knowing my son was being played for a fool. I've earned the right to be in the room." Andre looked at his father for a long moment. "Okay, Pop," he said. The email came on Friday morning. 4 days after their meeting. It was short, businesslike, exactly what he would have expected from her. "Mr. Whitfield, thank you again for bringing those discrepancies to my attention. I've completed a preliminary internal review and have found sufficient cause to schedule a formal compliance meeting with hospital leadership. That meeting has been set for Thursday evening at 6 p.m. I wanted to keep you informed as the originating vendor contact." F. Boone Andre read it twice. Then he set his phone face down on his desk, leaned back in his chair, and let out a slow breath through his nose. Thursday evening. He almost smiled. He pulled up his calendar. The hotel charges, every one of them, landed on Thursdays. Patrice had confirmed the visits on Thursdays. The misdirected text, the realtor, the exit plan, all of it built around the same day of the week, the same routine, the same assumption that Thursdays were safe. Garrett Boone would be sitting across a table from his wife and hospital leadership at 6 p.m. on Thursday, watching 6 months of carefully hidden financial maneuvering get laid out in front of him. And Tamika, if Andre played the next few days right, would be walking into that hotel suite at the exact same time, expecting an empty afternoon and a man who wasn't coming. He picked his phone back up and texted Tamika, "Hey, called Pop's cardiologist this morning. They had a cancellation, moved his follow-up to Thursday evening. I'll be tied up most of the night." Her reply came 9 minutes later. "Oh, okay. Hope it goes well. I might just use the time to catch up on some things at the clinic." He read that and set the phone down again. Some things at the clinic. The wording was so easy for her. So smooth. 6 months of practice had made it effortless, and that fact landed somewhere quiet and cold inside his chest. He didn't reply right away. He just added her message to the file, the same way he'd added everything else. Without emotion, without commentary. Just the record. He drove to Pop's house Saturday afternoon. Pop was in the kitchen when Andre came in, standing at the stove without the cane, moving carefully but steadily. He'd put some weight back on since the hospital. Color back in his face. The cardiac event had scared him, but it hadn't broken him. Andre sat down at the kitchen table and told him about Felicia's email. About Thursday. Pop turned the burner off and came to the table. He sat down across from Andre with the deliberate movement of a man who was conserving energy for the right moments. "Thursday," Pop repeated. "Thursday." Pop folded his hands on the table. He was quiet for a second, the way he got when something settled in him like a decision already made. "I'm not going to any cardiology appointment." "I know. I'm going with you." "I know, Pop." Pop nodded once, firmly. The matter closed. He reached over and tapped the table with 2 fingers. "You said you talked to a lawyer." "Wednesday," Andre said, "before I told you about the email." "And?" "The house is protected. I was the sole qualifying borrower when we bought it. My name is the only one on the mortgage." He paused. "She has no claim." Pop looked at him steadily. "The accounts? I opened a separate account 2 weeks ago and have been routing my direct deposit there since. The joint account still looks normal. I haven't touched what's in it." He kept his voice even. "The lawyer said to leave it alone until the filing. So I did." Pop was quiet for a moment. "You thought of everything," he said. It wasn't a question. "I tried to," Andre said. Pop leaned back in his chair. He looked at his son the way he sometimes did, like he was measuring something, and whatever he was measuring was coming up larger than he'd expected. 9 years, he said quietly. She had 9 years of you, your patience, your work, everything you built. Andre didn't say anything. "And she thought you were slow," Pop said. "She did." Pop made a sound low in his throat. Not quite a laugh. Something harder than that. "Well, Thursday came the way storms come. Ordinary looking until it isn't. The afternoon light was flat and pale, the sky a dull gray that couldn't decide whether to rain. Andre drove. Pop sat in the passenger seat in his good jacket, cane between his knees, eyes forward. They parked across the street from the hotel at 5:40 p.m., engine off, windows cracked just enough. The hotel entrance was clean and well lit. A pair of glass doors with brass handles and a short awning over the sidewalk. A doorman stood just inside. Andre had his phone on his knee. The file was complete. The lawyer had the paperwork ready. Felicia's meeting was starting in 20 minutes across town. Everything was in place. Pop didn't say anything. Andre didn't either. They just watched the entrance. And they waited. At 5:58 p.m., a cab pulled up to the curb. Tamika stepped out. She was dressed well. Not clinic clothes. A dark fitted jacket, heels, her hair down the way she wore it when she wanted to look her best. She paid the driver without looking up, tucked her phone into her purse, and walked toward the entrance, with the easy, practiced stride of someone who had done this many times before. Because she had. Andre watched her from the passenger window. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched her push through the glass doors and disappear inside. Pop said nothing. He just reached over and put one hand briefly on Andre's forearm. One firm squeeze. Then he let go. Andre opened the car door. They took the elevator to the 4th floor. Pop moved slower than Andre, but he kept up. Cane steady, jaw set, eyes forward. He hadn't asked Andre a single question on the walk from the car. He didn't need to. He knew the plan. The hallway on the 4th floor was quiet. Cream-colored walls, low lighting, the faint smell of recycled air and carpet cleaner. Room 4 and 12 was at the far end, past a row of identical doors, each one closed. They reached it just in time. Tamika was standing in front of the door, keycard in hand, pressing it against the reader. The little light blinked green. She pushed the handle down. Tamika. His voice was calm, not loud. Just her name, said plainly. The way you'd say it if she'd left something on the kitchen counter. She went completely still. Her hand was still on the door handle. The door was cracked open an inch. For a moment she didn't move at all, and the silence in that hallway was so complete that Andre could hear the faint sound of the ventilation system running somewhere above them. Then she turned around. The look on her face moved through 3 things in under 2 seconds. Shock first, then calculation, then something that tried to arrange itself into composure, but didn't quite make it all the way. Her eyes moved from Andre to Pop, then back to Andre. What are you? She stopped. Started again. What is this? Andre took 2 steps forward, not aggressive, just closing the distance to a normal conversational space. He held his phone in one hand, the screen dark. He didn't raise it. He didn't need to. 6 months, he said. Every Thursday. This hotel, this floor, that room. He spoke evenly, no heat in his voice at all. The corporate card in Garrett Boone's name, covering every stay. Your clinic schedule manipulated on every one of those days. The realtor you've been meeting with quietly. The plan to leave once Garrett worked out the money situation. He paused for exactly 1 beat. I have all of it. I have had it for weeks. Tamika stared at him. Something shifted in her face. The composure cracked, and what came out wasn't remorse. It was anger. You went through my things. Her voice climbed. You went through my phone. You've been spying on me? Andre, that is crazy. That is controlling and paranoid, and I cannot believe. The marriage is over, he said. Just like that. 4 words, level and quiet, dropped into the middle of her sentence like a stone into still water. She blinked. I'm not here to argue, he continued. I'm not here to be talked out of what I already know. I'm here because I wanted to look you in the eye when I told you it's done. And because everything that comes next, the filing, the house, the accounts, is already in motion. Tamika opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You can't just... She shook her head, pivoting fast, voice rising. You think Garrett is going to... You think any of this... "Garrett," Andre said, "is not coming." She went quiet. Pop stood slightly behind Andre's left shoulder, cane planted, both hands resting on its handle. He hadn't said a word. He didn't need to. His presence alone said everything it needed to say. Tamika looked at the cracked door beside her, then back at Andre. Something in her face faltered. A real thing, not performed, as the math she was doing came up wrong no matter how she ran it. Andre's phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced down at the screen. A text from Felicia Boone. Meeting concluded. Garrett has been suspended effective immediately pending termination and criminal referral. HR and legal are involved. I thought you should know. F. Boone. He read it once, slid the phone into his pocket. Then he looked at Tamika one last time. Not with anger, not with satisfaction. Just a steady, clear-eyed look that said everything the past 9 years had quietly earned him the right to say, without a single word. He turned. "Come on, Pop." Pop gave Tamika one long look, unhurried, unsparing, then turned with his son. They walked back down the hallway together, the two of them, footsteps quiet on the carpet, and left her standing alone in front of a door that now led nowhere. Andre filed for divorce on a Monday morning. He wore a plain gray shirt and carried a manila folder thick with documents, bank statements, credit card records, hotel receipts, the misdirected text, the realtor communications, all of it printed clean and organized by date. His attorney had called it the most thorough first meeting file she'd seen in 20 years of family law. "You did my job for me," she'd said, flipping through the pages with raised eyebrows. "I'm in logistics," Andre had told her. "I organize things for a living." She'd smiled. He hadn't. The filing took less time than he expected. The house was straightforward. His name alone on the original mortgage, a fact Tamika had never paid much attention to. The joint accounts were documented and divided cleanly. Everything he'd quietly moved and protected in the weeks prior sat in order, exactly where he'd placed it. He walked out of the attorney's office at 10:47 a.m. into a gray November sky, stood on the sidewalk for a moment, and breathed. That same week, Felicia Boone filed for divorce from Garrett. Andre heard about it through a brief professional email she sent him. 3 sentences, no personal detail, the same clipped tone she'd used in every interaction they'd had. She thanked him for the information he'd brought to her attention. She said she hoped things were moving in a better direction for him. She did not mention Garrett by name. Andre wrote back 2 sentences. He thanked her for her integrity. He meant it. Garrett's personal accounts had been frozen pending the criminal referral. His salary suspended. The shell account he'd been quietly filling for months, the one he'd apparently promised Tamika would fund their new life, was now evidence in a formal investigation. Whatever he had told her, whatever he had promised, was gone. The plan Tamika had built her exit on had no floor anymore. Andre didn't post anything on social media. He didn't send a mass text. He didn't make a single dramatic announcement. He made phone calls. He had quiet dinners. He sat across from people, their friends, their family, people who had stood at their wedding and eaten at their table, and he told the truth plainly, without theater. No names called, no voice raised, just the facts, laid out the same way he'd laid everything else out. Each conversation was the same. He would say what happened. He would answer whatever questions came. He would make it clear he wasn't asking anyone to choose sides, only to understand why he'd made the choices he had. Most people understood. Some were shocked. Some weren't as surprised as they let on. His cousin Marcus had gone quiet on the phone for a long moment and then said very simply, "I always felt like she was performing, man. I just didn't want to say it." Tamika, without Garrett's money and without a social circle that hadn't heard the truth from Andre's own mouth first, found the ground under her considerably smaller than it had been. Pop heard the final word of the formal filing from Andre directly, sitting at Pop's kitchen table over 2 cups of coffee on a Thursday afternoon. Not that Thursday. A different one. One that belonged to them now. Andre told him it was done. Signed. Filed. Moving through the court. Pop wrapped both hands around his mug and nodded slowly. He looked out the kitchen window at the yard for a moment. The bare tree in the corner. The old bird feeder he kept meaning to refill. Then he turned back to Andre with an expression that wasn't quite a smile, but was something close to settled. Something that had been waiting a long time to sit down. "I told you something was wrong with that smile of hers," he said. "Day one, I told you." A smile that practiced doesn't come from a happy place. It comes from a hiding place. He tapped the table once with one finger. "Cardiac event saved your life twice that night, son." Andre looked at his father. This man, who had squeezed his arm in a hotel parking lot without a single word and said everything, who had stood in a hallway on a bad carpet with his cane planted and his jaw set, and refused to miss the moment. He didn't say anything back. He didn't need to. He just picked up his coffee and drank. 18 months later, Andre walked out the front entrance of Crestview Medical Center into a bright Saturday morning in spring. Pop walked beside him. No cane anymore. The cardiologist had cleared him fully 2 months back, moving at a pace that suggested he was making a point of it. His annual follow-up had come back clean. Every number in the right range. The doctor had used the word excellent twice. Pop had told her she had good taste. Andre held the door for him. They walked out together into the sunlight, down the low concrete steps, past the ambulance bay where it had all started, past the bench near the parking lot, where Andre had once sat in the dark trying to hold himself together. He didn't look at any of it with dread anymore. It was just a building, glass and concrete and sliding doors. The sky above it was wide open, and the morning was clear, and the two of them walked toward the car without looking back. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.